Hi chickens, I'm going to have a tarot ramble now. I was just playing with my deck, gearing up to do a few readings this evening, and that was when I decided to teach a few techniques for shadow work, because I know Imbolc is a big time for shadow work, for that kind of consideration. One feels that the veil between the conscious and unconscious is still quite thin, and it is possible to do a lot of release work in that kind of acceptance of winter and preparation for spring, at least on the northern hemisphere, which gives us that kind of feeling that it's time. That's how I kind of see it. I feel like it's time and things get very busy with regard to working with the psyche and working with release and actually pulling things out from the undergrowth, if you like. So that was what got me thinking about shadow work and tarot and how they do make such a winning combination. And my ideas are not exhaustive by any means, and there are, you know, lots of other considerations which I may put in future videos if I find that the shadow work readings were helpful. But now I just want to go through and have a little bit of a random ramble, really, because I rarely do that with tarot. I've always got something really specific to talk about and a very specific angle to come at things from. And actually what I really enjoy doing sometimes is just going through my cards, making a cup of tea and going through my cards and just having a little think and a little sort of enjoyable contemplation, pondering, I suppose you could say, putting different connections together, putting different combinations together, and considering how my relationship with a card may have grown over time or changed over time. I was talking to Anya from the Anya Auger channel a while ago about tea, about the wonderful relationship between tea and tarot, and how sometimes she just likes to go to her tea collection, select a nice cup of tea and just go through the deck and just have a little think and a little ponder and a little mull over. And I enjoy doing the same thing. I think it's very enriching. I think it's good to maintain a bond with your tarot deck as though you would maintain a bond with a pet or a spirit guide or a family member. You know, you've got to keep your hand in. You've got to know that you still don't know everything that there is to know, and to really love your deck and make sure it's well worn and make sure you're bonded with it and make sure you're touching it all the time. You know, one thing that I find really funny is how synchronistic tarot truly can be, and with particular consideration to cards which seem to come up for various different kinds of querent. So, for example, for seekers who are looking to start businesses or progress with their businesses, I tend to notice that these days, anyway, the Page of Cups comes up quite a lot, kind of as a gentle encouragement to a business owner or somebody who's looking to start a business, that they need to network, they need to collaborate, they need to get their name out there, they need to be unafraid of doing that. And that's a side to the Page of Cups which can be very potent, because I think a lot of the time we do look at cups and instantly think about relationships and love and self-love and things. And we forget that, of course, every element has its place in every aspect of life when we're looking to consider and explore it. And it's strange that the Page of Cups should come up so much in business for some people, I suppose, but I've kind of broken down that barrier which exists between the various different elements and their supposed correspondences in the physical realm. So a lot of people kind of get stuck in the early days of their study with cups and love or pentacles and business, and they kind of get very thrown when they see a lot of cards from an unexpected suit come up to answer a specific query. But once you get over that, I think that's the point where working with the minors becomes so much more enriching, because you actually recognise the depth. It's like you really strike oil when you can manage to get over that really classical portrayal of the different elements pertaining very fastidiously to different aspects of life, and you can actually branch out from there. So I feel like the Page of Cups has a lot to say about networking and communicating and getting your voice out there authentically when it comes to business. The other thing I think it's important to note with the Page of Cups, this is kind of how my relationship with him has grown, is that he's really good at speaking to people that he doesn't really have anything in common with, or he doesn't have any surface common ground or empathy with. He's really good at talking to people who are a different species to him. He's there with the fish, and you know, he and the fish are having a right little chat, a little bit of banter. So he's very good at stepping outside of his comfort zone, and sometimes this card can come up for people who are looking to step out of their comfort zone. Maybe they're seeking a new connection, maybe they're kind of bored of the dynamics that are going on and they want to expand, you know, that kind of thing. They're looking to be authentic with a new group of people. And one thing that I really love about the Page is that he seems really cavalier, and I love his pose in the Rider-Waite deck particularly. As you guys know, I am branching out and working with other decks, and I'm really enjoying doing that. But Rider-Waite is always on hand. I carry it around in my bag most of the time, and I'm at my mother's house at the moment, so she will be expecting a reading later. I have to sing for my supper when I'm with Mum. She does the food and I do the cards. So that's kind of how it is. I think also that the fish is a representation of the depths of the psyche. In tarot, water normally represents the depths of the psyche, and in symbolism, in the collective unconscious, etc. So he's got the water behind him, and I kind of feel that there's a sense that he's not drowning in the emotional work that he's got to do, and he's not kind of pushing himself overtly with personal development to the point where he's not in touch with the tangible realm anymore. He's not in touch with consensus reality anymore. So he's not kind of become the hermit in any sense, and he's also not become this kind of like stressed out neurotic mess who can't deal with what's inside his own heart and mind. But what he does is he takes this relationship he has with the fish, and the fish naturally exists in the realm of the psyche, in the depths of the ocean, the depths of the untapped reserves of the emotion. And he's having a chat with the fish on his own terms. So I feel that it's almost a representation of control over the emotional realm, in the sense that he knows that he doesn't particularly have to get completely lost in it. He knows that he can have his personal development and spiritual evolution on his own terms. And I like that about him. I feel there's that sense of control there. Whereas I always feel like the Knight of Cups in Rider-Waite is about giving and offering and that kind of thing. You've got to love the Ten of Swords, right, I think. I always look at that body in the Ten of Swords and imagine it to be a butterfly emerging from the chrysalis, and how we think about that as being glorious and lovely and beautiful, when in fact it's actually quite stressful and quite ugly and quite gooey and kind of quite chaotic, and you know, it's a very fragile fight for life, if you like, during that transition. And it takes a while, you know, and it happens more organically and kind of muckily than we would like to believe. And the Ten of Swords for me is all about, with all the tens, they're about completion. They're about ending a cycle and going on to the next cycle. So I kind of see this as a reminder that sometimes the emergence from the chrysalis and the ability to move on to new ground is not kind of, you know, picture perfect and happy and lovely. It's chaotic, it's scary. You have to leave the familiar, you have to push your comfort zone. And that's what I really think about with the Ten of Swords quite often. I've really changed my relationship to the Star card. The Star card is one that I got stuck with and stagnated with for a really long time. I think it was because I found it more abstract. You'll always have these cards that you feel are more abstract in a sense, I feel. And, you know, you'll struggle with them. The Star, I always used to read things like hope and healing, and I kind of used to put them into practice. But I also realised that, again, as with my my perception of the Page of Cups, the Star, there's this suggestion that she's in control of the emotional realm. She's actually working out what she can take from the emotional reservoir and place into her tangible endeavours. And she's also working out how much she can take from her own reserve and potentially give to something else to help that flourish. And that's important too, because the Star often has this charity theme, this theme of compassion and this theme of being in service. I've read that in many books with regard to the Star. And being that light, being that starlight for somebody else who doesn't have that light to see by themselves. So what's really important in this image for me is that she's actually assessing and working out and kind of calculating how much it's possible to give, how healthy it is for her to be in service, and you know, to what extent she can do that without running her own well dry kind of thing. So I think it's that consideration of self-preservation too, which I think is so great about the Star. And Judgment, I love the fact that Judgment and Death are just right next to each other here for this video. Judgment and Death are really similar. I tackled this in one of my Tarot Frequently Asked Questions video, in the sense that they both represent a complete metamorphosis. They both represent a complete shift. And the way that I tend to see them, although of course it will depend on the context of the spread and such, is I see Death as representing metamorphosis which is not necessarily invited, which is not necessarily expected, and which can quite often be resented if the querent is unyielding or inflexible or insistent upon the status quo. Whereas Judgment is this realisation that comes from conscious desire to awaken. It's a conscious epiphany, it's a conscious change, it's something you seek, it's something you work at, it's something that you know is on the horizon and you really want to get on board with it and give it your passion and honour that desire to open your eyes in some way. And both can be uncomfortable, both can be scary. When you're a seeker, when you're on a spiritual journey, or when you're looking for that next phase in your emotional development, maybe you're looking to release anger about something really tragic that happened to you. You want those things, yes, you want to seek those things out, but it still scares you that you want to seek them out. You know, you'd still far rather run away and hide than actually do the work that you are so drawn to do. So with Judgement, I would say that there's no real idea that there's no fear of this metamorphosis. You know, the metamorphosis is something that you are going after consciously most of the time, but there's still fear, there's still trepidation, there's still emotional resistance a lot of the time. So you still have that same emotional turmoil that you have with death, except with Judgement, it is on your own terms, and it is something that you need to encourage yourself with. You know, you need to show up for yourself. You need to stand strong and be in your power and know that you are strong enough to make this journey. So I think that's the key difference between them, and I love them both. I absolutely adore Judgement. Judgement was a card that I had problems with for such a long time, a really long time. And some of the little white books didn't help. Some of the things I read online didn't help. They were maybe vague, maybe generalised. I maybe couldn't make the connection between the interpretations I was reading and how I could actually use those interpretations to help people on a practical level, and that is part of what I like to do with my practice. So Judgement was on the periphery as a card that I had a little bit of a emotional block with, and then I really started understanding the link between Judgement and death kind of eased me in to this more comfortable understanding of what Judgement was all about. And now I really love it. When I see it come up, I'm always so pleased and so happy. And it's really nice when your relationship with the card changes, you know. It really is nice. Because you get to have that lack of trepidation when it comes up in a reading. Like the Hierophant, I don't know if I can find him right now because I'm kind of having a little play with my cards, which I just so love doing even now after all this time. I never tire of it. But the Hierophant was another card that I found it oh, there he is, just shown up for me, bless him. Had such struggles with the bloody Hierophant, really had a lot of emotional resistance towards it. And as I've said in many videos, when you have emotional resistance towards a card, it's normally because it represents the seed of emotional resistance within towards whatever that card represents. And that is so true of my relationship with the Hierophant. The Hierophant is discipline, the Hierophant is structure, he's tradition, he's conformity, he's hierarchy. He's all of those things that I so detested when I was growing up. I've always been a major maverick. And at one point I was indeed a full-on rebel without a cause. I love to go my own way. I don't really enjoy systems. Even now I'm a chaos witch, so I follow an anti-system, and I enjoy the kind of writing that involves cut-ups and experiments and things that don't make sense aside from on an almost sensory poetic level. I don't enjoy reading what I would call straight lines. I enjoy reading stuff that seems like it was kind of like written by mescaline itself, like it was like the hand of psychedelic god that was upon it. It wasn't even a human that wrote it. You know, I like to read stuff that really, and write stuff that really takes me over. And I'm the same in my ritual practice, my magical practice, the kind of art that I appreciate, that kind of thing. And so the Hierophant is well other to that, basically. So I did have a resistance for quite a long time. And I'm glad to bond with the Hierophant now. And the way I did that was really just by examining what is it about the Hierophant that really pisses me off, and how can I really come to embrace him and get to grips with him. And I think that was really what I was doing there. The World has always been one of my favourite cards. I don't know if I must have listed the World in my video about my favourite cards. I mean, it was ages ago that I did that. It was one of the first videos I put on the channel. I think it's called My Favourite Tarot Cards. But back then I was kind of a little bit shifty about how long my videos were and how much I spoke, because I really thought it would tick people off. So maybe I chose to not include it, I'm not sure. But I've always seen it as a representation of me, not in the sense that, you know, I'm all done and dusted and I'm self-actualized and, you know, everything's roses, because that's kind of not what I mean, but just her stance. And whenever I see the world in other decks, I kind of have this instant relationship. And I feel that she's thirsty. Okay, because the world is about the ending, the world is about integration, self-actualization, graduation to the next phase. So there's lots of pride there, and there's lots of being able to kind of recognize how far you've come and give yourself credit. But the thing to remember about the world is that the end is the beginning is the end. Is the beginning is the end. So whatever she's graduating from, she's now moving on to fresh terrain, which is completely different, which is once again going to challenge her, which she may once again have emotional resistance problems with as she moves into that uncharted terrain. Actually, the Three of Wands is here, and that's all about uncharted terrain and about daring to step forward into the unknown. So the world is very much just as much about being naive and being a novice and being comfortable with that. I think the world asks us to check our ego at the door, and that's what I really like about this card. I enjoy that about the world. I think it asks us to say to ourselves, yes, we have done this work, we have achieved, we are proud, we give ourselves credit, we acknowledge, we honour, etc. But it's time to recognise now that we are at the bottom of the pile again, and this is not to berate oneself or mock oneself. This is simply to recognise that it's okay. It's okay to be at the beginning. It's okay to be at the starting line. I think that's what's exciting about it. So I just love connecting with my cards. I might chat more about them later, but these were just some thoughts for now. Much love, blessed be.